How does God talk to you? Or how does God express through you? Depending on whether you see God as external to yourself or whether you're part of it all. I imagine if you see God as external to yourself, then He doesn't really talk to you. You learn about God from others, from a book, from a man with a white collar. I don't know. I mean, certainly where I was at, I don't know. I think I still had some stories that He was speaking to me, but I was disempowering myself and pushing away the true nature of God by trying to find Him in a book or through what somebody else told me He was. How do I speak to God? I feel like I've had I would say every day almost a little bit more of Tom cracks. And by what do I mean by that? I mean another layer of neurosis, another layer of the conditioning, the insanity that we all hold thanks to this, let's just call it satanic world. A little bit more of it cracks each day, and a little bit more of the consciousness that I am part of, that we're all part of, we can call it God, shines through. That part of us that is consciousness, that part of us that's connected to everything and all and everything that's ever been, gets to shine through a little bit more, has a bit more of, to put it simply, the ego. But it's more than that, because the ego implies, to many who don't really understand it, you know, this arrogant, very human part. Whereas I feel what's occurred for me over the last 24 hours, I mean, I suppose it is that. I suppose it is that. So yesterday, I woke up with a lot of excitement. But it was like excitement on the external. And I could wrap it up at the time. Even yesterday I was, telling myself like, oh, I'm bursting into purpose. Consciousness wants me to be seen. My YouTube has exploded. And I think yesterday, I recorded 4 or 5 videos. And I uploaded the first one to Not Today Satan, which has just had an extra 10,000 subscribers in the last week. Is now on 36,000 subscribers, and I got the first one public, and then suddenly all these pop-ups started happening, and yeah, basically I've been banned for a week. YouTube has decided that 3 of my videos that I posted over the last 2 weeks are highly offensive and go against community standards, because of course the community standards are standards of indoctrination and plebbery. I don't really subscribe to those. So, I've been banned for a week off my main channel, just as I was starting to earn proper money. Just as I was starting to earn the kind of money that, that means I can really enjoy this travel experience. Quite hilarious, really. So of course that was a bit of a sucker punch. It didn't really bother me that much, but I felt it energetically. So suddenly all these videos that I had to post, I was planning on posting 3 videos on Not Today Satan yesterday. Couldn't even upload them. And yeah, all this energy and direction that I felt I had just disappeared. And I could really feel that something was shifting energetically. Like I could feel like I had no space for words. Now those of you who watch English Refugee know Stephen, know what a wonderful man he is. Very chatty. Very, very chatty, and it's fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. But it's chat, it's all from the mind. And suddenly I was moving into a space I could just feel where I couldn't hold any chat. It was all about inquiring within, feeling these new levels I'm going to use the word despair, but people are going to misunderstand it because they're going to, you know, think that I was having a really hard time, and in some ways I was. But I've kind of experienced what I'm trying to speak into so many times now that I don't go into the external despair anymore. There's no or very little like there's nothing external really. It's all internal now, because I know that's where the work's done. And I know that there's this, by feeling on this deep level, that's how it's transformed. That's how God guides you. You know, this is why I always speak about depression as a teacher. Unfortunately, when you're suffering from depression, you haven't discovered what I'm trying to speak into now, and you're resisting it, and therefore you're in it for long periods, hence it becoming depression. I experience depression feelings often and intensely, but I go into them and I just surrender to them and fully feel them, allow them to take over my everything. I don't fight them at all, I don't resist them at all, I don't look for ways to escape it at all. In fact, I smoke a load of weed, which makes it way more intense. I've really been noticing recently how, yeah, it's weird. This part of it's weird. I find that weed is actually now, I used to smoke weed to escape my mind, but I think now that I'm so disconnected from my mind, it actually puts me in my mind. It actually starts all these silly stories, these external human stories that we all make so important. But I actually experience a deep sinking feeling the minute I smoke a joint now. You could call it anxiety in the belly. And I think this has been really healthy and powerful for me. I think the green herb has allowed me to feel more deeply and become more embodied than most people are even aware of as a concept. But after the shift that occurred yesterday, which I don't know if I've even spoken into yet, this is a bit of a messy video, I'm trying to just speak without stopping. After the shift that occurred yesterday, I can just feel that I have more peace and more presence without cannabis. Now, I'm probably going to test this a few more times and smoke some more weed because it's such a pattern for me. And I can feel that I'm going to do it quite soon today. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to regret it as soon as I do it. That's been how it's shown up for the last few days. Just this like instant like, oh, why have you done that? And there's stories around, well, I've got nothing else to do. Like, of course I'm going to do that. But I'm really not nailing this video at all. So yesterday, I woke up with lots of excitement and what people would consider feeling good. Most people would consider all those emotions positive and a good thing. But actually, they were all about the external. They were all about my YouTube, you know, for want of a better term, becoming famous. Not that I aim for that, but you know, that it's a good faming, an easy faming for it, but it means I don't have to speak for another 5 minutes. You know, egoic stuff, money, survival, but extravagant survival, you know. And then, whilst I was experiencing all that, for it all to get taken away from me, and I had to go through this period of acceptance, what I've woken up with this morning is just a deep sense of peace, a deep sense of how I'm being guided and how God has totally got me and how there isn't really any separation between us and how none of this matters at all. Oh, I'm gonna have to stop the video. Bloody hell. The stream of consciousness needs to recalibrate for a second. Yeah, it was going somewhere. It was going somewhere at one point. I don't know what happened to that point, but it was going somewhere. Anyway, this is where it was going to try and go. So it's in the deep despair. Even though, like, so for example, when I lost everything in Thailand, I went into actual despair, like external despair, you know, screaming, shouting, disengagement, what people would call depression for a long period of time, or for 3 to 6 months. Whereas yesterday, when something got taken away from me, I experienced a resistance to the acceptance of it, which showed up as getting stoned. Right, so basically last night I ended up watching Twitter videos, as in scrolling. Like, I very rarely do that, you know, these short brain rot videos that are just awful. Anyway, I did that last night for about 4 hours. I mean, it was vile. It was absolutely vile. I hated every minute of it, but for some reason I just found myself in it. And it's like, this is what it is. When you're trying to avoid yourself, you have to go to stronger levels of low vibration. So that might look like heroin or cocaine or sex or whatever. So yeah, so a big one for me is a smoke and a wank. You know, and I know every time I do it, every time I go for my dick, I know that I'm not serving myself. I know that I'm not allowing myself to be in my most present, highest vibration. And I can feel the part of me that doesn't want to be in that, because it comes with responsibility. It comes with mystery. It comes with the next part of the journey that God is always there to show you and take you to, if you're willing. And you know, it's amazing, because I'll read comments on my videos and I'll just function in this world around people and see like how people misunderstand this journey, how people are desperate for some sort of salvation, some sort of peace, some sort of happiness, but they're not willing to take any of the responsibility that goes with it. What am I trying to say here? I'm not trying to knock anyone, I'm not trying to criticize anyone, I'm trying to teach people how to do it. I'm trying to share my experiences on how I've experienced it and how this stuff actually works. Because it's by leaning in to a deeper part of yourself, the mystery, you know what I mean? That's the key point. Everyone's avoiding the mystery. Everyone wants to know. I mean, look at Christians. They're trying to tell you how you'll get saved by dedicating yourself to some man, that rather than the content of your character, you know, it's about whether you've dedicated yourself to a deity. I mean, it just makes no sense at all. But what I'm trying to speak into is the dogmatic arrogance of anyone that claims to know how this world works, particularly spiritually. Why am I saying that? I think I'm trying to highlight the desperation of the ego to know, rather than to surrender to the unknown, which is so much more scary. Like when I had my 6 months desperate stage and gave myself to Jesus, basically because I was in a Thai jail. You know, it's amazing how many people find Jesus when they're in jail. Apparently there's quite a famous quote, "Where's Jesus? He's in jail." Anyway, I was in absolute fear and desperation and turned to Jesus. And in my delusion and arrogance, there was a real sense of comfort in the knowing. In the knowing. But now I just look back at it as, you know, such just a laughable part of my journey. Not laughable, that's not fair. It was very necessary. Right, I'm not meant to be talking about Christians. There's something else that wants to come through. So in my despair with it wasn't even despair, it was like I went into, so when you're about to break, or when there's an opportunity to break into a deep presence, a deep layer of consciousness within yourself, it's also external to yourself, I'll just call it the ego, because that kind of is understandable for people. Like, that bit gets scared, because that bit wants to stay with what it knows, because the ego is actually a safety officer based on past experiences, but just wants to keep you small and safe. So the ego doesn't want to surrender to the next part of the journey. So for me, it goes into this, like, how can I numb out? How can I just pretend all this isn't happening? And because I was going through a strong shift. Like, this shift isn't like these daily little incremental shifts that I talk about. That's not what I'm talking about here. The last 24 hours has been like a profound shift. So the parts of me that want to resist that have to go to new levels of shadow. So scrolling Twitter videos, which, you know, like I say, I very, very rarely do. Anyway, I woke up this morning after, so this is what I'm trying to say. It's always darkest before the dawn, basically. And although I didn't go into like deep external despair, me watching Twitter videos and just totally numbing out, that's darkness. But I had to go into that to feel that level of resistance in me, to just be in that level of resistance. I didn't judge it. I didn't resist it. I was just in it. And I just allowed for 4 hours for that level of resistance to be felt. And it's like you have to experience and feel these energies, these emotions, these resistances in order for them to be transmuted. And although I didn't really know this was happening at the time, like I was just too disengaged. And that's also part of the process, because none of this is going to come from a mind. None of this is going to come from the intellectual, analytical, like the stuff I'm talking about now is on an energetic feeling level. Anyway, so I just went to bed in numbness, I think with the video on, just numbing out. And then this morning, I have woken up with a peace and a presence that I will have experienced before, like when I've drank ayahuasca or something like that, but there's like a clarity. It was just a clarity, just a synchronization, a peace. I feel like I'm almost at the point where I could just sit on that bench for a few hours and not really need anything. Maybe I should try it. Is there a message? Is there a summing up to this video? The external will only ever distract you. You know, whether that's focusing on migrants, the government, a book called the Bible. You know, if you're focusing on the external, you're never gonna surrender. Yeah, that was the key point. This cracking of self, this cracking of the layers, to allow this divine essence. Yeah, because ultimately, at the bottom of all these layers of conditioning and I'm Tom Greatorex and these stupid characters that we build up that don't even exist, is divinity. Is the shard of consciousness that came here dressed up as you, I believe, to escape itself, but we won't get into that because that could be my projection. But what I will say is basic fact is you are consciousness pretending to be human. Not quite sure why. Like I say, I think consciousness got bored of itself and wanted to escape the perpetual agony of being alone. That's what was shown to me on a 15-gram mushroom trip. But I was very depressed at the time, so it could be my skew. But I speak to quite a few. You know, the deepest people I know have all had a pretty similar experience to that. So, yeah, it's like allowing those layers to crack through, not trying to avoid them. You know, like, so the day before, I can actually now see that manic happiness was avoidance. Was like me going more into the external because something big was about to happen internally and it was scaring the shit out of me. Now this is all subconscious, like I didn't know this was happening at that time. But yeah, it's like, I just can't express, you know, there's a reason why half of my title for this channel is surrender. In fact, more if you base it on the number of letters. You know, surrender is everything. I think I spoke in yesterday's video about moving from control to finding purpose to surrendering and letting go of it all. Because we don't know anything. We don't know anything. And if we're trying to control our existence from the mind, from the personality, from the character, we're just staying in the Maya. We're just staying in the delusion. And we're definitely going to come back here. I mean, I've got to a point where I realise this isn't an individual journey. You know, I've always kind of, you know, the ego, the hope, the part of me that doesn't want to be on this earth anymore, has always sort of told itself this story of enlightenment to escape, basically. You know, if this shard becomes enlightened, it won't have to come back. But I'm starting to realise this is all collective, and this is where we get, you know, bodhisattvas, those that are, we're told, those souls that come back here to raise the consciousness of humanity to the point where we can all leave. I don't think they choose to come back. You know, I think until all of humanity, because it's all one. It's really becoming clear to me how it is all one, and that, you know, everyone needs to come back. So like, because the part of consciousness within me is within everything else, including these blooming beesbugs, of all things. I can't see them, including this tree. Not as good an example, because obviously the beesbug, you'd never think had consciousness in it, but I'm pretty sure it does. What am I trying to say? But all these parts, to get back to being consciousness, obviously all of it needs to come back. So yeah, I suppose what that means is a greater dedication to service, a greater dedication to others, because it's pointless just focusing on self. However, I do think, let's go off on another tangent, as if this video hasn't been messy enough. I do think that there has to be a period of self. You know, those that are people pleasers, that are selfless, that are giving from a disempowered place, you know, that's avoidance. That's avoidance. So I think we have to go through this journey of self and self-discovery and all is self to get to a point where we can actually serve others. And I guess I feel like I'm getting to that point. Alright, I'm going to end this rambling now. I hope it was okay. Actually, I don't really care. Just do with it what you want. If he wants to project onto it and dismiss it as nonsense, and you're just not ready, that's fine. It's just fine. Yeah, so this message is for, you know, the top 2% of consciousness. Those that have, what I mean by that, it's not about better or worse, it's just those that have surrendered, you know, which isn't many people. Yeah, it's really hard to meet surrendered people, you know, there's very few. Stephen isn't surrendered, for example. He's amazing, he's interesting, he's kind, he's beautiful, he's wonderful, but he's not surrendered. He's not, because ultimately it comes down to appreciating silence and not having to avoid silence, because that's when you'll find yourself. That's when you'll feel yourself, I should say. And if you're trying to avoid silence around others, which I find myself doing, you know, you get caught in the mire. When you're around those that live in the mire, you get pulled into the mire. So, like, I found myself, you know, it's like reacting to other people's anxiety, reacting to other people's awkwardness, trying to, you know, you diminish your own power and your own presence and your own gifts and magic because others can't hold it. So I find myself many times when I'm around a normie getting pulled into a conversation because they can't handle silence. Anyway, so Stephen's right on the cusp of this. You know, Stephen is still in the external and noise, the comfort of that enough to want to avoid silence. As in this story that we all hold until we go on a deep journey, that to be silent with another is awkward. You know that feeling, that awkwardness you feel when a silence happens when you're with your friend? That's what I'm talking about. Now for me, I feel it. But I feel it from the other person more than myself. And I'm happy to just sit in it. And I actually really enjoy watching the other person squirm in it because I know what's happening, because I've been through that myself. And yeah, it's really interesting. It's really interesting. And I actually feel like you're doing it. So for example, when me and Stephen sit together now, I actually feel like I'm doing a disservice to engage in the chatter that the scared parts of him want to engage in. And I feel my medicine and the kindest thing I can do for him is actually to not respond and sit in silence and bring him to that silence. But it's so hard. It's so hard for anyone. This isn't about Stephen. I'm just using him as an example because I'm around him at the moment. But not many people can handle it. And they'll get to a point where they'll start repeating stories that they've already told to you. You know, it's but they're just so scared of silence, and especially silence with another. So yeah, I guess that's my encouragement. I encourage you to go and sit at the fence and be silent and watch how they react, feel how they react, and feel how you react, and then ask yourself, like, what is this conditioning that tells me that I have to perform with another, that I have to stay in the mire, stay in the mind, stay in the noise? Then ask yourself whether it's worth being with another, or whether you're better off just being with nature and God in silence. Okay, that really is it. Let me know what you think. Or don't. Whatever. See you later.